There's nothing better than a dinosaur film. As a young child, I used to flick through the TV channels searching for dinosaur movies. One day I came across what I think was the Valley of Gwangi, therefore assumed, naturally, that all westerns would feature dinosaurs. I can tell you from experience, there's nothing more disappointing to a 6-year-old than to sit through the entirety of Wagon Master, only for an Allosaurus to not appear. Nothing against Wagon Master, it's a pretty good film, but there are no dinosaurs in it. That's just a fact that one has to accept. But despite that disappointment, I needn't have worried. Dinosaurs are plentiful across the cinematic landscape, and now due to video on demand, I can project dinosaur movies straight into my face 24 hours a day until it gets boring, which it never will. Of the creatures that often appear in fantasy, horror, and science fiction cinema, dinosaurs are notable due to the fact they actually existed. They are real, unlike dragons, vampires, werewolves, or trickle-down economics, and it's intensely delightful that these creatures, some of which were huge, terrifying, and or weird, once walked the same earth that we're living on right now. Of course, dinosaurs on film are rarely representative of how these creatures actually existed, and so in turn, the dinosaurs of film are a kind of fantastical creature, inspired by history maybe, but entirely fictional, which means there's a lot of fascinating variance in how these creatures are presented. This series is my attempt to make an extensive critical history of dinosaur films. Now, is this a good idea? I don't know, mate, but give me a second and I can explain why I believe this project has value. The history of dinosaur films is tied with the history of cinema itself. Some of the technological leaps and special effects happened within and alongside dinosaur films. Dinosaur films cover a huge range of different kinds of movies, from massive blockbusters to cinema classics to obscure and delightful nonsense. All these will be fun to explore. Most importantly, over the course of cinema history, the meaning we associate dinosaurs with has been established in part via the stories told on screen. We associate dinosaurs with certain ideas. They become symbolic of abstracted concepts, whether awe, nature, history, horror, or affability. The semiotics of dinosaurs is something that has been influenced by and develops with the films they appear in. So how are we going to do this? Well, we need to answer a couple of questions. What is a dinosaur? And then once that is established, what is a dinosaur film? So first question, what is a dinosaur? There's of course the scientific definition. This is tied to common ancestry with certain classification criteria, but that doesn't really apply to what we consider dinosaurs to be in culture. For example, pterosaurs are not technically dinosaurs by the scientific definition, but they do form part of the imagery we associate with dinosaurs, so we should include films such as Pterodactyl. We also want to include dinosaur films where the dinosaur is an entirely fictional creature, such as the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. So how about this? For the purpose of this series, a dinosaur is a dinosaur-like creature as we understand them in pop culture. Therefore, we will include films that feature pterosaurs or underwater reptiles that aren't technically dinosaurs like Plesiosaurus. What we won't include are films about prehistoric creatures which are essentially large versions of modern day animals. So no prehistoric snake films or megalodon films, etc. Nor will we include films about prehistoric creatures that are completely absent of any dinosaur-like features. So the graboids from Tremors, which are said to be Precambrian or Devonian depending on the source, won't be a part of this series. Nor will Gamera, who in his initial series of films was described as a prehistoric turtle. He's just simply not dinosaur-like enough, though still awesome, nothing against him of course. Dragons will not be included. Of course they won't. Yeah, I know they're often reptilian and dinosaur-esque, and the myth of the dragon has been theorised to have been influenced by the early discovery of dinosaur fossils, but I think it's fair to say they are mythological in nature and have their own iconography separate from dinosaurs. Their inclusion would confuse things. What about Godzilla? I mean, he's a monster, and you would be forgiven for calling him either a dragon or a dinosaur. He shares attributes of both. In many films he's described as a prehistoric reptile, but sometimes he's explicitly a dinosaur that has been mutated. Sometimes he's an iguana that has been mutated, though I think that was largely agreed to be misjudged. You know what? I'm going to include him and all his films. His imagery is just too dinosaur-like and he's too iconic not to include. This project would feel incomplete without him. Plus, he's Godzilla, come on, he's the king. Who doesn't want him in? But as for other kaiju, they have to be explicitly dinosaur-like to be included. So we'll have 1956's Rodan as a part of this list, but not 1961's Mothra. You know, because she's a moth. So now we've established what we consider to be a dinosaur. Now the second question, what is a dinosaur film? I'm not going to include every single film that features a dinosaur because some dinosaur appearances in films are incredibly minor. There's a brief moment featuring dinosaurs in Men in Black 3, but it's seconds long. There's simply not enough to talk about there that could sustain an entire video. But on the flip side, I do want to include some films with dinosaurs in where the dinosaurs are not the main focus of the work. Obviously King Kong is the central figure of King Kong, but the dinosaurs are still a huge part of it, so the 1933 King Kong must be included, as well as some other Kong films. The same goes for Fantasia. The dinosaur sequence is but one segment, but so influential and impactful that it also needs inclusion. So I will say that I will include all films where the dinosaur is a notable part of the film. Okay? When it comes to these two guidelines, it will depend on my own interpretation. You may disagree with what I consider to be a dinosaur or a notable dinosaur appearance. There are films that no one will disagree as a dinosaur film, but when it comes to some of the ones on the edge, there might be a debate. Tell me what you think in the comments. I will be including theatrically released dinosaur films as well as direct-to-video, streaming or television films. So yes, I will aim to do all the Land Before Time sequels, as well as films such as Raptor or the Carnosaur sequels, etc. I won't be doing feature-length documentaries as interesting as they may be. I'll be focusing on fictional works. I won't be doing television shows either. It's just too much to ask for me to watch all of the Flintstones, Dinosaurs, and Barney the Dinosaur. I don't want to do it, but I will do any feature-length spin-offs or adaptations on those TV shows. I think that's a fair compromise. I might do a mini-series because that's manageable, but it will be a little while before I get to those, so at the moment that's up in the air. I'll think about it. So, it's a bit of a big project and perhaps the insane idea of a complete maniac who should be locked away. I will endeavour to get these done on a consistent basis, but I do have a full-time job and a life, believe it or not, so we will see how it goes. The length of each video will depend on how much I have to talk about. Some entries might be 5 minutes long, others may be an hour. I won't know till I start writing them. I will attempt to go in chronological order from release date, but give myself some leeway in this regard, depending on how easy or difficult it is to procure some of these films. If this seems like something you'd be interested in, please subscribe and like this video to let me know that you feel this is a worthy pursuit. The first entry will be the 1905 film Prehistoric Peeps, a film often said to be lost. This is not the case because I have seen it, and I'll discuss it with you soon.